Hello, everyone. Again, it's me, My Air Image, or Farm Dad Word Barf on YouTube. I'm kind of mixing those two formats together, the Facebook and the YouTube. Did another video. First of all, though, a shout out to Ryan and Clay in West Point. They invited me on an airboat ride, and they helped get a lot of nice new footage. So if you see them around town, buy them a beer. They deserve it. Also, another thing about airboats, if you ever get the invitation to go on one, take it. I don't have a lot to say at the moment about airboats, but I will say I get it. I get why people are so obsessed with these things. They are a lot of fun. So for international folks, we'll start wide. We'll zoom in. We are looking at West Point, Nebraska. And it was recently flooded a couple weeks ago. Some of you might already know that. New subscribers know that. That is Elkhorn River, and roughly there is where we went into the water. And if you hear screaming upstairs, it sounds like the 5-year-old and 2-year-old are fighting over toys. So I apologize. Anyway, so take a look at the Elkhorn River in relation to this lake. And that narrow little strip there, that's a road. I want you to kind of put that in your memory for later on. And we took the drone roughly in this spot. If you hear that screaming, I'm pretty sure there's a mother up there, and it might stop soon. I just don't want to restart my recording. Okay, so we'll transition. On the left is what you're going to see is a strip of sand going through trees. That is the old path of the Elkhorn River. On the right is that lake that you noticed at the beginning of the shot on Google Earth. And then that gap on the left third of the screen, if you divide it in thirds, right there, right dead center of your screen now, that gap is where that little road was that I was saying try to remember. So the old path is on the left. The new path of the river is down the center of this lake. You'll notice that the debris out the middle is full-size trees. Those are very large trees. So don't let the distance fool you. This is looking straight down at the riverbed. It is now essentially dry. I mean, there's standing water there, but there's no water flowing through it necessarily. And this is just a small glimpse of the scale of it. Like I said, we barely got a mile. I don't think we even got a mile upriver. And there's already evidence of some pretty heavy changes from the flood. From there, we turned on a GPS device with some tracking. I should turn that on. Okay, so this should show some new information about where we went from there. You'll notice that the path of the river is now going through the lake, as I said, and it's hard to tell or notice this difference on the airboat. Like, it just feels like you're on the river. And then once I put it in Google Maps or Google Earth, I realized how much it changed. And I brought the drone back, and we went a little bit further and take a look at this house up here. This is me just turning 180 degrees to fly back to the airboat. At the top of the screen and a little bit to the right is that house that I was mentioning. We're getting a little bit closer. You can see that little, where the river bends on the right-hand side of the screen. There's that wall that we're looking at where there's a house sitting. Now, to the uninitiated, you might think, why would someone build their house that close to the river? Well, they didn't. A lot of that soil, a lot of that ground is gone. And here's a shot I took from the airboat itself. Take a look at the trees on the right, and they took a look at the tree in their backyard that's real close to the edge of the wall. Our path, this blue line, did not go all the way up against the shore. Now, I use this thing called the ruler tool in Google Earth. You can measure distance and you can measure area. What I'm going to do is a little outline of this area that's close to that blue line that represents our path on the airboat. And I'm also going to use those trees as a reference point. That first point is where that tree was really close to the shore or the edge of the wall. And we're just going to highlight an area. It should be giving us a rough idea of how much ground was lost. That rough estimation should put it at about 5 3/4 acres. So that house wasn't built close to the river. The river just happened to move itself closer to the house. And that's just one example. That's a very small example on the entire state, but right there is roughly 6 acres that got peeled away and pretty much eaten by the river. There's another example. I don't think I have drone footage of that area, but I wanted to focus on this one further north, just around the bend from that house. Now, this is just farm ground, but I want you to notice how much sand was deposited up in this field. Now, the field lost ground. There is a lot of that field that's now part of the river, but there's also a lot of it that's covered in sand. Additionally, I'm going to freeze frame it here soon. I want you to take a notice of this irrigation pivot. That center pivot, for the folks that don't know it, that's the well. That's the pivots work where there's the center pivot where the well water comes up. And you see that first length of the pivot, that first segment. If we were to flip it all the way around, you might be able to get 2 of those sections, probably not 2, less than 2 sections before it was in the water. So I want you to remember how close that river wall is to that irrigation pivot as we finish this kind of panoramic shot. Okay, now Google Earth from a couple years ago or a year before, we see the irrigation pivot there. We can use the ruler tool to measure a distance. I'm going to say that segment of the irrigation pivot's about 150 feet. And we were thinking it might be 2 segments before you hit the edge of the wall, which is going to be close to 300 feet. That blue line is where we were on the water with the airboat. So we weren't up against the wall, we were close to it. So we can assume that at the end of that yellow line is where the water currently is. And we'll switch over to the polygon tool, and then we're going to do a rough estimation using that blue line. Again, that's blue line's our airboat path. That's the path we took with the airboat. And using that and a little bit of what we shot with the drone, we're going to measure out a rough estimation about how much ground is now in the river. We're going to say it's close to 31 and a half acres. I would say, if I'm wrong, I would be conservative. It's probably a little bit more than that. But here's the thing. That's 31 acres that's in the water. That doesn't account for how much is covered with sand. I would almost say there's more than that, more than 30 acres, probably close to 50 acres covered in sand. And more of it's falling into the water. You'll notice here soon, watching the lower right corner, there's going to be a little bit of soil that falls down. So that's happening probably a couple times every minute of every hour of every day since then, just a little bit more falling in. So if we have 30 acres that fell into the water, I'm guessing close to 50 acres or more covered with sand. This farm ground lost about 80 acres. And this is just one glimpse, spending less than 10 minutes of travel time in an airboat. And this is what we found. We found close to 80 acres already not being able to farm for this season. It is done. And it's not going to be farmed next year either. It's just going to be covered in sand. So I don't know what the recovery time is when it comes to recovering farm ground. But even if, you can see how thick that sand is up on top of that. That black line is the soil and all the sand on top. So it's probably done. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a little break to see what was going on upstairs. Seems like it's resolved. I wanted to show you this photo. This is a map of all the waterways in Nebraska. And eastern Nebraska had pretty much all these areas flooded. So I want you to think about, we saw a small glimpse of what was damaged, and then multiply that, over that 1 mile, multiply that over the miles and miles and miles of waterways that we have in Nebraska. And this image is kind of showing you, again, it's a small way to show the scale of the flooding. But notice right here as I stop, that's the Elkhorn River that we were looking at previously in the videos, and this is what it looked like at the peak of flooding. That flooding there, what we saw there with the 80 acres that was either in the water or covered in sand, or the home that was about to fall into the river that's now uninhabitable, that is all over the state. That's happening multitudes of times over. So I want you to kind of put that into consideration. Also, I was going to direct some of you to my Facebook page. On my Facebook page, there's these 360 images that are hard to display for YouTube. And if you go to my Facebook page, feel free to browse around at some of these 360s that I shot during the peak of the flooding. This is the town of North Bend when it was underwater. And, you know, it would probably help me out a little bit while you're there. If you're exploring my Facebook, go ahead and give it a like. So if I shoot some more aerials or more videos, you'll get notified on Facebook as well. What I might try to do is I've had a couple ideas that I'm trying to nurture into a maybe something more consistent, or find a way to produce content more regularly with more incentive. Now, I did a thing where I sent out an invite where I said, hey, if you guys wanted to tip $2 for a gallon of gas, you can donate through the PayPal on the YouTube channel. And for those of you that have done it, I appreciate it immensely. I think I sent thank you emails to everyone that's donated. And if you haven't gotten one yet, you might have been like one of the last 2 or 3 people to donate. So I got to go back and check. But I think everyone that donated, I said I gave you a personal thank you. And if you want personal thank yous addressing something specific, put that in the notes on the PayPal. Like if you have a question or if you have a comment that you want me to address, go ahead and put that. I try to address, I read all the comments on YouTube and I try to respond to some of them, but anything in the PayPal I certainly respond to. What I'm going to try to do different, which is which puts less demand or less requirement on your behalf, is I'm going to try an Amazon link where if you click on the link and you make a purchase, it tells Amazon that, oh, this person that whose content I'm trying to support directed me to shop at Amazon. So a portion of that sale will come back to me as like a referral or maybe a commission or in some form like that. Like I'll make a recommendation of a purchase, but you don't have to purchase that item. You know, I think any item that you purchase gets me some sort of credit, and it's a small, but I'm thinking it requires the least amount of input on your behalf because a lot of us shop on Amazon anyway, and it should not raise the prices of anything that you're purchasing. It's just a way to sponsor content creators. I think if I were to get some traction on that, I could find a way to produce more content, and that content. I'm going to make maybe a longer video as far as what kind of content or website I would like to build here over the summer and show you guys. So subscribe if you want to see something like that. The Amazon link will be in the description. And as always, appreciate your time. Thank you for viewing and subscribing, and I'll keep in touch. Have a good one.